D.H. Lawrence, Henry Miller, Norman Mailer. I'd never read any of those authors until I read the 1970s bestseller Sexual Politics by the, quote, women's liber, unquote, Kate Millett, who attacked all three of those authors as male supremacists and took them to task for their sexual ethos. Her attacks on them got me interested in them. And so the first time I read any works of theirs, well, the first time I read excerpts, of course, was in Sexual Politics, but the first time I read any full works was after reading Sexual Politics. Now, what do you know? I actually did like those authors. D.H. Lawrence in particular, brought a lot of poetry into his work. He had a very great sensibility for the English language. Now, I also read some criticism of his, some literary criticism by Joyce Carol Oates. And Oates took a different view of him. She believed that it was very easy to see his views and his stories as very flat and polarized until you realize that he is the female character he seems to punish. He divides himself up lavishly in his works, just as many authors do. And if you realize that, then his stories open and live and become much more vibrant. For example, in a footnote, Kate Millett mentioned a short story written by D.H. Lawrence called None of That, which she called a piece of hate. Now, it was a story about a wealthy American white woman who had a kind of an odd fascination, kind of sexual fascination with a South American bullfighter who was of largely Indian ancestry and who had a certain amount of obvious contempt for her. So there's kind of like a sadomasochistic element in their flirtation. It does lead to a disaster. I won't give the whole thing away, but I'm not really sure that it was a piece of hate because, well, it does lead to a disaster for the woman. It's also mentioned one of the male characters is shot. That's mentioned right at the end. So again, it's kind of complex in how Lawrence is viewing things. Lady Chatterley's Lover, Oates says, and I think she's right about this, is that it's a work that almost everybody sees as one in which Lawrence kind of uses Mellors as a spokesperson or a mouthpiece. But Mellors is no more D.H. Lawrence than Lady Chatterley is, or than Lord Chatterley is. Anyway, those are just some thoughts I had. And when I mentioned that I had read those authors after I read the criticism of Kate Millett to Erica Jong, she said, "Cool, even criticism can open the mind." It opened mine.